Well, let's just pull ourselves up in a chair here and say hi to all our fans over the city of Winnipeg who are enjoying Math with Marty. We tape 2 shows when we come in. We tape 2 in a row. And the last show we taped, we had a guest on with us, and he's still hanging around the studio. He's a young kid. He's pretty sharp in math, and we had him go to the blackboard and work out a problem while we were doing our song last week, and we thought we might do the same thing. So I just want to acknowledge that he's here. He's not really going to be interviewed like he was last week, but you can say hi. Okay,
hi.
There you go. Okay, now take the camera off and back to me. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay. Yeah. He'll be back. He'll be back later. I am a hopeless camera hog. I mean, it's what can I do? I acknowledge it. But anyhow, it's nice to be back. And what we did since Ping was on last week, we didn't resume the problem which we left behind 2 weeks ago. So we're going to return to that, and I'm going to head for the blackboard. We're going to take off some of last week's work. Don't you have people to do this for me? Oh, just kidding. Colored chalk, all kinds of colors. And last week, 2 weeks ago, we had this kind of question here about whether we could make sense out of various figures, and we started from taking the total amount of revenue of Manitoba Hydro, figuring out how much you get for kilowatt hour, and comparing this to the number of generators they've got installed on the Nelson River, seeing if it all added up times the number of seconds in a year. I mean, I love doing these kind of calculations, but the thing is they just never end, because once you figured out that the amount of generators they got on the river has some bearing to the cost of the electricity, which reminds me, I see in the newspaper that Kanawapa is a $5.6 billion project. $5.6 billion project. That's a big project, but how are they going to make that back? I mean, their total revenue as a whole company is only $400 million a year, which is less than, it's only 6% of your $5.6 billion cost. So, and Kanawapa does not double their capacity. I mean, it's only another 1,000 megawatts. So the value, as far as what they're selling it at now, is if they sold all the power of Kanawapa for the same as what they're selling the power they got, it's only a revenue of about $200 million. So it's like a rate of return of 3%. But I guess you got to figure the price of electricity is going up, and this and that, and those are expensive projects. I think there's no way around it. You gotta build a big dam way out in the bush where there's no infrastructure. But that's there were some other figures. They said they were going to sell $13 billion of power to Ontario or something. Now they sell $400 million of power with what they have total within Manitoba, without Manitoba. Now that's a deal where they'd be selling like 40 years of, if you multiply 40 years by $400 million, that's sort of the size of the deal they're talking about that's going to pay for Kanawapa. I think it's actually a rising price of electricity that causes these figures to add up. You see, it's based on the volume of their current business. You know, a $400 million a year business, to invest $5.5 billion just to increase your capacity by 30% doesn't make sense. But I think the price of electricity is rising. Anyway, the water's flowing into the sea anyway. We should be harnessing it, which is what we want to get to now. As we figured out last time around that the total flow in the water in the Nelson River came to approximately 2,500 meters cubed per second. And that was based on multiplying the height of that water that was falling through times it by the volume, which gives you a quantity of energy. Well, mass, or, well, anyways, it sort of tells you the amount of energy somehow. The mass of the water, the volume, the distance it's falling through. and sort of equating it to the total available potential once they've built all those dams that they've got in their eyes down into the year 2100 right to the mouth of the river, that they were going to have so many megawatts, and this is what it added up to. And then there's a couple of ways you could try and make sense of it. You could say, well, how big is the river, and if you throw a little chip of wood in it, how fast is it moving, and how deep do you think it is, and does it add up to 2,500 meters cubed per second? It's an interesting calculation to do, but we actually were doing it a different way last week, and what I said we wanted to calculate it was there's three big rivers supporting this Nelson system. There's the Saskatchewan, which is a huge river, draining all the prairie provinces. There's the Red Assiniboine system, which drains a chunk down there. Those are well-known rivers, but then there's the Winnipeg River over here, flowing from Lake of the Woods, Rainy River system, stuff like that. And there's little miscellaneous things, the Barons River, there's this and that, and we'd like to say hi to our friends up in Shermattawa, by the way, who are loyal fans out there. It turns out, although these rivers here have a very big area which they drain, I think the rain falls in that area, it soaks into the soil, and it doesn't really end up getting to the lake. But the rain that falls in the Winnipeg River system, just basically, it's falling on rock, and I think it flows right into the river. So what I did is I said last week, and I didn't have time to finish the calculation, that if you say, what is it, 300 miles to, well, let's say it's 400 miles to Thunder Bay, but let's say 300 miles to maybe where the watershed occurs, because let's say Thunder Bay is a little bit outside the watershed. So I said, let's take 300 miles by 200 miles. As the approximate area we're taking, which I round to 50,000 square miles. 50,000 square miles. And then I said, let's take the rainfall over that area and see if it adds up to 2,500. Well, okay, the Winnipeg River should be responsible for about half of that 2,500. So let's say 1,250 meters cubed per second. And well, it got to the end of the show, and I did the calculation. Well, I didn't have time to do the calculation. Okay, so I did it at home. I took the 50,000 square miles, and I said, well, in Winnipeg, I remember that we get like 20 inches a year total precipitation. And I guess I probably converted it all to square kilometers and metric units. And I did the calculation, and I multiplied that 20 inches flowing down by the 50,000 square miles, and it came to down near 1,250 meters cubed per second, as though the whole of that water was actually reaching its destination here. Now, some of it has got to soak into the ground or evaporate back, I guess. Okay, these are rough figures. They're just approximations based on guesses we've been doing. It's interesting that they do sort of work out close. I mean, it's good they work out close. If you take what I'm saying, I think it's clear what I'm saying is I took 20 inches per year and multiplied it by 50,000 square miles. Well, you can see what I'm getting is height times area, which is volume, divided by time, which is volume per time. Well, I've got inches times miles per year, and I'm going to convert that into meters cubed per second to equate it. But that's all just nuts and bolts stuff. Interesting thing, the calculation comes out sort of right. And then I phoned the Weather Bureau, and it turns out that these locations down here, starting at Kenora, of course, we're in a metric system in this country, so they won't tell you 20 inches per year, but it turns out Winnipeg is like 500 centimeters per year. Well, actually, it was Winnipeg was 520 centimeters, Kenora was 620 centimeters, and Rainy River was 720 centimeters, and there was some other place they gave me that was 820 centimeters. Just coincidentally, they were... Anyway, so they're getting about 50% more rain over this area than we are in here. So that helps to account for some of that large throughput of water. They are getting more than I initially estimated. But I guess the efficiency is high in the Canadian Shield territory. That First of all, I mean, if you fly over it, you just see water, so the stuff that's falling down is hitting water.
Isn't 100 centimeters 40 inches?
Millimeters. Did I say centimeters?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they gave it to me in millimeters. Yeah. Centimeters, millimeters.
Yeah, okay, because then
Good ear.
it seems quite different.
Anyhow,
Well, I have a question about this stuff.
Okay.
The way I like to think about this is the height of where the water starts off above sea level is a battery. It's a voltage. And that system, that river, is like a wire. And then every time they put a generator on, they're putting a resistor on. So I want to apply Ohm's law to this system, and I want to know, like, how do they figure when they can stop just putting another dam in? Because every time you put a dam in, the water got to back up a little.
yeah, okay. Now, there is some practical considerations in here, and let's sort of draw what.
First of all, tell me if there's a basic flaw with the analogy.
Yeah. The deal there is we want to make it electrical, and I can tell you, electrically speaking, that if the river was, you're thinking of the river basically as a short circuit, and that's where the flaw is.
It's a distributed resistance.
The river is a distributed resistance. If here's your basin of Lake Winnipeg, and here's your Hudson Bay, and if the water were just spilling down here with no friction, no resistance, it would have a phenomenal velocity when it was rushing into Hudson Bay. But in fact, the velocity is very much limited by the slope. And so, adding one dam here, the amount of dams you can put in is actually based strictly on welling it up like so. I mean, how many times you want to drop it.
Mm-hmm.
And the height of the dam is, well, it's an economic consideration based on how big the lake they want to back up.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, you want to stop that water dead so that all the throughput occurs at these generators.
Right, so after Kanawapa, like, are we close to doubling the resistance that it was 500 years ago before we built the dam, or 100 years ago?
Oh, it's still flowing just as fast. I mean, the total throughput, you're not throttling the amount of water at all. All that water that's starting out there is still getting through.
Mm.
It's just you're putting useful resistors in here instead of useless resistors.
But as you back up every little basin, isn't it harder for this water to
No,
get out?
by backing up the channel, you're drastically reducing the resistance in this section because you're providing it a wider channel to flow in, if you want to think of it resistively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whereas a thing in its own narrow channel has to flow quite fast. You back up this lake and it's dead stop. So it's not wasting energy slowly diffusing through the lake from the back of the lake to the front of the lake. There's almost no resistive losses in that. All the energy is available at the point of throughput. And this is a calculation I want to do. I happen to learn how to do these flow calculations of channels. I won't do it today, but I actually know how to do this this kind of calculation. Well, basically, let's say a pipe, a 100-foot long pipe, 1 inch in diameter. You connect it to the city of Winnipeg supply, 60 pounds per square inch. Turn on a tap at the end. How fast does the water come out the pipe? I actually know how to do that calculation. It's a funny thing. And someday I'm going to do it on television. Like on television, I get to do this. I mean, this is like Channel 11, what it's all about. It's a guy has his dream. And I look at other guys on Channel 11, I see they're not that much different from me. The majority of them seem to be all fired up about getting on TV and talking about their religion. But I guess it's really not different. Then there's the guy here who wants to teach dancing, and he's fired up about that too. But the desire is still the same thing. I want to talk about how fast I can push water through a pipe. The other guy, he wants to talk about God. It's a funny world, isn't it? And with that, we're going to head over and do a song. We're going to give our guest here, Ping, we introduced him at the start of the show, and we said we'd give him a problem, and he's a bright kid, and we gave him a problem last time. We did a long song, and I kept looking at the board and the chalk was scratching. Turns out he solved the problem right in the first chorus of the song, and then he was just sort of doing refinements in it and playing around and drawing pictures for the rest of it. So now we're going to give him this question, and I'm going to give you a sphere. Let's take it a unit sphere. Well, a unit sphere, radius 1, if you like. Radius of 1, and we like to inscribe a cube in the sphere. inscribe a cube in the sphere, and we're going to ask you how long is the edge of the cube. I don't know if it's easy or not.
I think...
Do you think so? Have an opinion?
It's 2 over root 3.
2 over root 3.
That's a quick guess.
Sounds good. Well, I thought we had a tough question for the kid, but he's got that one already, and I'm
not going to draw pictures and explain it, maybe.
Well, maybe while we're playing a song, he can put his explanation up on the board.
Now, do you have a guess as to what the tetrahedron is?
Ah, now that would be an interesting one. Okay.
Do it.
Okay. That would be, oh gee.
You see, this, I love it because the guy's fired up, he's pumped up to do problems. I mean, I hang around the university and I never meet a guy interested in doing a math problem. But Pink, go at it, and we're going to do a song.
Okay.
And try not to make too much noise with the chalk because the people love to hear our music.
Sure.
Okay. No, do all you like. They can turn your mic down if they have to. So don't worry about making chalk noise. Yeah, right. Okay. And we thought we'd do this song by Eddie Raven. Now here's a guy. He's a beautiful singer. He's a Louisiana origin. Like he's got this song like Bayou Boys, and a lot of his songs have this kind of Mississippi Delta flavor to it. I guess this one doesn't fit in that category. What else did he have? Oh, he had a lot of nice songs. That song, Joe Sure Knows How to Live, about the guy taking the trip to Mexico.
And he did some duets, didn't he?
Oh, I forget. He's been...
He didn't do that one with Juice Newton?
No. That was Eddie Rabbit did that one with
okay.
Juice Newton. The same one that was on the country charts, they had that song, and simultaneously it was on the pop charts. That, what the heck was that song? There was a duet, and there was one pair doing it on the pop charts, and Juice Newton and Eddie Rabbit were doing it on the country charts. I just can't think of what it was. Friends, we can't be both to each other. I'll be your friend, I'll be your lover, etc. Nice song. That's not the one we're going to do. Maybe when Sharon gets back from her studies overseas, and fans remember Sharon used to come on the show and do songs with us, and maybe when she gets back, we'll learn that one. Anyways, we're going to do this one, The Island. There was a time, there was a girl I loved. That was my moment, that's just the way it was. But careless and crazy, running from God knows where. Now where is that heart? Where is the one who cares? I can hear the music, wandering boy, come home soon. I can hear you calling, I can see your face in the moon. Now who am I fooling? There's no need for me to pretend. I could sail forever and never find that island again. Where you leading me? I can hear you calling, wandering boy, come home soon. I can hear the music, I can see your face in the moon. Now who am I fooling? There's no need for me to pretend. I could sail forever and never find that island again. I fight with my memories, find all the pieces I can. Oh, the beautiful woman who trusts see we got the 4-minute flag, and Ping has got an answer here. You all know how much time he had for this one. It looks a little bit weird.
Yeah, it's a bit messy.
Oh no! Oh no! You might have done something scary. You might have got an algebraic answer.
Oh, really?
Yo, I think I know the answer in trig functions. What have you done? Show us what you done. We was trying to find the length of a side of a tetrahedron. It's not actually the question I would have asked you if I'd have thought of it, but you've got an answer. This is a hard one.
Yeah.
What have you done?
Okay, it took me a while to figure it out. I drew a sphere here and I draw a tetrahedron. And I go, whoa, well, got this tetrahedron on side 1, and I just couldn't get that. And I thought, oh, gee, I think Marty's got me now. And then I thought about the way I did the cube one. And the way I did the cube one is you figure out what the distance is from the center of a cube to one of the corners. And then you take the reciprocal to get the sphere. So I thought I'll do the same thing here. And the way you do that is you take your tetrahedron, you take just one side of it first, right? Suppose it has a side of length 1. I guess you could call it x, but I'll just let it be 1. Okay, let it be 1. Okay. And then the altitude, if you know your 30, 60, 90 triangles, this is a half, right? And your altitude is √3/2. Then you take that altitude, and you look at the triangle sideways, right? So it's going to look like this. And this is the bottom of the triangle, right? Now, the top is exactly over the middle, the center of this triangle. And that means, this is probably bringing up a couple things.
Center's 2/3 of the way down. I'll give you that. The audience, everyone knows that at home,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah. It's on the median here, so it's 2/3 of the way down from here to here, right?
Yeah.
And this, of course, is the same thing, so that's √2/3. And 2/3 of the way down that is 1/3 of the way from here, so that's √2/9. And you square that, you get 2/27. 2/81. And you square that, which is, oh gee, I think I made a mistake here. Okay, square that, you get 3/4. Square this, you get 3/4, and subtract 281, which gives, oh gee, a big mess, which gives
He's reducing terms. Do it as fast as you can. The camera's watching. I'll
Okay.
just commentate. Now
Got
he's
it.
just bringing his fraction to lowest terms. He's going to have the square of a
81.
triangle.
Okay, this might not be right, but anyhow, you subtract this, take away the 8, and you get
237 over 364.
35.
35.
235 over 364, which is a big mess.
Is that a square, or you got to take the square root of that?
I think you got to take the square root of that. It shouldn't be this messy, but in any case, this would be the distance from here to there. And then once again, you take 2/3 of that to get from the center to there, which gives you another huge mess. And then you take the reciprocal of that. And the reason you take the reciprocal of that is because you know that since we're all doing lengths here, right?
Right. You've normalized it. You've said you started off where the side was 1, and you've got the radius of the circle. But I told you the radius of the circle should be 1, so you got to invert it.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly it.
Excellent technique. We don't know if it's the answers right. And what was that one you said was the length of the inscribed cube? That's more my speed.
Should be
You said it was root of
2/√3.
2/√3. That's what
Yep.
you said. We'll
2/√3.
just draw that on the board, and we'll think about that some other time. This one, it got a little bit out of hand, but the inscribed cube, we said where the radius was 1, we said that this side was 2/√3, and we'll think about that another time and see if he's got it right. Sounds right to me. You done that before?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Similar things.
Well, that just about wraps it up for Math with Marty. And thank you, Ping, and sorry we cut you short on the end of this calculation, but they're just going to wave us off, and we always end with a song, and ending with a song is more important than singing the math right. We all enjoyed seeing all that stuff on the board. I'm sure
Great.
the audience at home is bewildered, and I think it's excellent.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
Pleasure to have you. And what do we got for wrapping up the show? Song? I love the organ I got on this thing. I got all these sounds on the inside. Ooh, it's just like being in a hockey game. But we got to do a song. Come on, come on, come on, come on. We got to do a song. Okay, here we go. They say don't go on if you're looking for a wife. 'Cause Clifton Clower has a pretty young daughter. She's mighty handy with a gun and a knife. Her tender lips are sweeter than honey, and Wolverton Mountain protects her there. The bears and the birds tell Clifton Clower